Today I'm with Ben Kingsley from Empower Wealth Advisory, and we're talking about the importance of property selection when you're investing in real estate. Okay, Ben, where do we start?
Des, the most important thing about property investment is the asset selection. Getting that asset selection right and the capital growth is going to be a game changer for a lot of people when they're investing. Let's look at this example here where we're talking about a $550,000 property growing at around 7%. Now, if you get a 1% better outcome than that, over a 10-year period, that's $100,000. Over a 20-year period, that's $435,000 difference. Now, if you get a 2% better return, we're up towards near $1 million over a 20-year period. So it's an absolute game changer.
So if you're getting 9% per annum as opposed to 7%, that's $1 million over 20 years.
Correct. So if we look at this slide here, Des, what we're actually seeing back in time in 1974, South Melbourne median house price was $18,700 and then Cranbourne was $22,500. Now, back in those times, people escaped from the city.
Wanted to live out there.
They wanted to live out there. It was a real choice. Commuting was easy. These days, commuting's tough. Our roads are very congested, and now we're seeing a change in the way in which people are choosing to live. So when we look at this, we see now in today's terms, South Melbourne is now $975,000 as a median value, and Cranbourne's $312,000. That's a 10.9% difference in compounding returns per annum for South Melbourne, and only 7% for Cranbourne.
And even though it is 4%, like you would have thought Cranbourne would only be 3%, but it's still 7%. Sounds quite healthy.
It's that time gap, that 35 years and that compounding return.
And of course,
the sort of difference you get.
Again, highlights the importance of where you select, obviously, where doing your homework.
That's right. It's all about research. So if we look at, some tips for the viewers, if we go into those 5 tips in researching investment property grade property, let's have a look at those. So the first one, we actually want owner-occupier appeal. 70% of the market demand comes from owner-occupiers. So if we study where they want to live, we're going to be studying an area that's got, pent-up demand. If we look at the next example, we're saying, where do we buy? We want limited land supply. We don't want to buy in an area where there's an oversupply of land, because with an oversupply, you're effectively going to limit the growth of that land value.
Which is why places, inner city suburbs, South Melbourne, Albert Park, all those areas, there is such a limited supply.
There's no land, is there? No available land for, we have to basically refill that land to get value out of it. So that's going to grow and grow in value, and that's effectively a fundamental driver for capital growth. The third example, we're looking at demographics. So we're actually trying to understand the types of people who live in that area, because it's their incomes that's going to drive the affordability conversation. Now, if they get high incomes, then they can afford to buy more, and that's what we're seeing. So people living in South Melbourne, as an example, Des, they've got obviously very high disposable incomes, and it's that income that allows them to afford to pay those $1 million figures these days and obviously into the future.
Is this what's called drilling down?
It is. It's obviously about getting to the bottom line and doing the research properly. Searching is not research. Understanding the fundamentals that drive the value is where you're going to create your wealth.
Where do we find demographics?
Demographics are available on the ABS website. So the recent census data is being released this year. So there's some good data available for people to research. When we look at the next tip, we're basically talking about this change, this quick access. I mentioned earlier around people are choosing convenience. We're all time poor. Now, by being time poor, we want to get quick access to our employment centres. Now, the major employment centres is where we're going to earn our big incomes, so obviously that's the CBD locations. So executives and people who are on higher salaries are choosing to live closer to those areas, and that's why those rail and road networks are important. The same for our tenants. They want to basically have quick access to where they want to be, because they're also time poor in living the life they want to live.
Ben, your final point?
Yes, there's lifestyle attraction. Again, it's a study of human interest and human behaviour in the way in which people look at property and the areas that they choose to live. And we're trying to follow that demand of those owner-occupiers moving to that area. So we have an area that's full of, great lifestyle drivers, the restaurants, the activity centres, and everything that's attracting them to those areas. Effectively, we're going to see where the demand is, and we want to follow that demand.
And it's been a change in public sentiment or thought, I suppose, in recent decades, that they will move, that they don't just buy a house and sit there for 30 years.
They will, and people will pay a premium for these areas, because they love the opportunity and the attractions of those areas. So that's what we're looking for as investment research to try and get that outperform result.
So what can people do to be proactive about their own research?
Well, there's plenty of opportunity to find research out in the marketplace, Des, and one of the things we've been able to do is study auction clearance rates, and that's a real-time demand indicator for people who are out there actively buying. So we've actually produced a report for your viewers, and they can download that from your website, and what that report is measuring auction clearance rates by household type. So it's drilling down right to where we're seeing, what's the clearance rate of two-bedroom houses in North Fitzroy, and they can really get an understanding of the actual demand behind that particular market.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. If you'd like to know more, go to mptv.com.au, follow the links and download that fantastic report.